First story. My stepson goes on many trips with his father, which is unfair to my kids. So I demand my stepson shut his damn mouth in my house, and demand his father stop taking his ungrateful son on trips or take my kids on his trips. And then I walked out at my stepson's school speech after he called his bio father his hero. Now everyone has abandoned me, and I hate this silence. So I 36M have 2 kids from a previous relationship. My daughter is 13 and my son is 11. My wife 33F has a 7-year-old son from her previous marriage. We've been together about 4 years, married for 2. I have my kids 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. My wife has primary custody of her son, and he sees his dad every other weekend from Friday afternoon to Monday morning. Plus 6 weeks scattered throughout the year, usually not overlapping with our plans. His dad's pretty present, I'll give him that. But he's also 100% that Disney dad type, and I'm just gonna say it, it's starting to wear thin. The problem is, every time my stepson comes back from a weekend with his dad, he's bouncing off the walls talking about all the crap they did, like non-stop. Monster truck rallies, laser tag, camping out in the woods, some indoor skydiving place, an aquarium sleepover, amusement parks, It's something new every single weekend. And while I'm glad the kid's having a good time, it's getting harder and harder on my son, who hears all these stories and ends up sulking or straight up saying stuff like, "Why don't we ever do anything like that?" The thing is, we're not doing nothing. My daughter is deep into competitive dance, and my son's been in club soccer since he was 6. Between practices, weekend tournaments, late-night runs for forgotten cleats or tights, and the usual school and house stuff, our time is stretched thin. Most weekends we're up early driving to some field or performance hall, and we come back late, tired. There's rarely time to even sit down, much less hit an amusement park. And honestly, after shelling out for competition fees, uniforms, hotel stays, and private coaching, we don't have much money left for fun stuff. So yeah, I'm kind of fed up watching my stepson's dad pull out all the stops like he's got a parenting travel agency, while I'm here trying to do the day-to-day grind and getting painted as the boring household by comparison. And yeah, I know I'm not supposed to care about what the ex is doing, but when it starts affecting my kid's mood and how he sees his own family, I do care. We've had smaller incidents before this. Last year, my son started refusing to come along on regular outings unless they were something big. My wife took all 3 kids to the zoo one Saturday while I was out of town. My stepson was thrilled, but my son kept asking if there were roller coasters, like they had at the place his stepbrother just went to the week before. When told no, he sulked most of the time and even said out loud that it was boring. That was awkward. Then around Christmas, we couldn't afford to do one of those holiday train things he wanted, because we were still recovering from all the competition travel. Meanwhile, his stepbrother came home from a Polar Express weekend trip with a mini suitcase full of candy and a hand-delivered letter from Santa. To be honest, I've started resenting how easy the ex seems to have it. He doesn't have to parent full-time. He doesn't have to deal with tantrums or chores or school drop-offs or waking up at 5 a.m. for games. He just shows up, plays superhero dad for 48 hours, then dips. But because he gets to do all the fun stuff, it paints a distorted picture. My stepson comes back, and everything we do feels second-rate in comparison, especially to my son. My wife and I have had conversations about this before. I brought up maybe asking the ex to not go overboard with the activities, to maybe space them out or do more low-key stuff. She shot that down hard, saying it wasn't our place to dictate how her ex-parents behaved during his time. Fine, whatever, I didn't push it. But I can't pretend like this isn't affecting my household. Flash forward to this weekend, my wife had a shift swap at work and couldn't pick up her son from his dad's place. I volunteered to go since I was off that day. Her ex opened the door, said hi, and invited me in while my stepson got his stuff together. We haven't talked much beyond polite exchanges before, but he seemed friendly enough. Then we got into casual chat, and I mentioned, and yeah, maybe I was fishing a bit, that it must be tiring planning stuff for every single visit. He laughed and said, "Not really, it's fun." That rubbed me the wrong way, I won't lie. I told him it's been kind of hard on my son lately, hearing about all the stuff his stepbrother gets to do and feeling like he's missing out. I said maybe he could try to ease off a little, not every visit needs to be some epic event. He even said maybe his son would benefit from being in sports or something more structured. He gave me this sarcastic, "Oh, sorry man, didn't realize fun was a problem," and asked, "What do you want me to do? Take him to sit in a DMV next weekend?" Honestly, the tone pissed me off. I said I wasn't trying to start anything, just that it'd help things be more balanced, and maybe a little less competitive in the house. He clearly wasn't interested in hearing it. He just told his son to grab his shoes. And that was that. Later that night, I told my wife about the conversation, thinking she'd agree, or at least understand where I was coming from. Big mistake. She immediately looked at me like I'd lost it. Said I had no right to tell her ex how to parent. I reminded her we'd talked about how frustrating it is watching her son come home with a new adventure story every time, and she goes, "Yeah, it's frustrating, but I'd still rather him have those memories with his dad than try to tone it all down just to make you or your son feel better." That kicked off a bigger argument. She accused me of constantly making excuses for not doing more with my own kids and said I expect her to fill in the blanks. She brought up how she took my kids bowling and shopping just last weekend, while I stayed home to rest. And yeah, okay, I'd woken up before dawn to drive my son to a soccer match that day. But I guess that doesn't count. She's now saying she might text her ex to apologize, because she doesn't want him thinking she's behind what I said. I told her that'd be embarrassing, and that we should be on the same team here. But she thinks I crossed a line. At that point, I was already annoyed. So I said flat out, "I'm just trying to look out for my kid. He's the one who has to live in the shadow of these ridiculous weekends." That didn't help. She snapped back with "Easninkert, then take him out more. Make better memories instead of blaming my ex for having a pulse and money." That set me off. I told her I do plenty already. I coach my son's soccer team. I'm at every game and every tournament. And I handle pickups, gear, and practices. And with my daughter, I'm the one footing most of the bill for her dance stuff. It's not like I'm sitting on my arse doing nothing. I just don't have time or cash for magic shows and water parks every other weekend. She said that's the issue. It's all task-based with me. Driving, dropping off, writing checks. I'm not doing memorable things. I'm just checking off boxes. Which I thought was unfair. But whatever. This isn't the first time she's accused me of being emotionally distant from the kids. Back in March, she told me my son barely talks to her when I'm around because I micromanage his schedule like he's an employee. She said I run a tight ship, not a home. I told her that's how I keep things together. If I don't run things tight, things fall apart. My ex isn't in the picture much, and when she is, she's a mess. So I've had to keep structure for my kids, or else we all get buried. That's not going to change because her ex wants to play Peter Pan on his weekends. She also brought up something from last summer. My son had gotten in a fight with my stepson because he lied about going on a private boat with his dad. Turned out it was true, and my son just didn't believe it. The fight got physical. My wife had to break it up. I punished them both equally, but she still thinks I downplayed how much resentment my son carries. She thinks I haven't dealt with it, and that now it's just bubbling out in other ways. I don't deny there's resentment. How can there not be? My son hears about ziplining and hotel buffets, while he's waking up at 6:30 a.m. to drive to soccer fields in the rain. He sees the difference. He's not dumb. But instead of acknowledging that, she keeps defending the ex. He's just trying to make the most of the time he has. Sure. But at some point it stops being about bonding and starts being about outshining. And now I've got my son asking me why his life isn't fun. I've got him asking why his stepbrother always has new toys, stories, and experiences, and he just has practice and homework. And maybe I didn't say everything perfectly to the ex, but I was trying to level the field. I even brought up the idea of putting all 3 kids into more group outings together. But my wife says I only suggest those things when I'm trying to control the situation. That I don't really want the kids to bond, I want to correct the scoreboard. I don't even know what that means. I get that blended families are messy. I knew that going in. But I didn't expect to feel like an outsider in my own home when it comes to decisions about what affects all the kids. And yes, what her ex does affect the other kids. If my daughter started coming home from her mom's every other weekend with spa days and concert tickets and shopping sprees, I bet it'd change the tone in our house too. It's not about jealousy. It's about sustainability. I don't think it's healthy for a kid to get this hyped up experience every time he sees his dad. It makes the rest of his life feel dull. You can already see it creeping in. He gets bored during our regular dinners. He whines more during the weekdays. When we go to the park, he complains it's too normal. It's setting expectations that can't be met consistently, and not just by me, by anyone. And the longer this goes on, the more friction it causes between the kids. My son keeps his distance more now. He used to play with my stepson constantly. Now it's hit or miss. If he knows the weekend's about to end and his stepbrother's coming back, he shuts down. Doesn't want to talk, doesn't want to hang out. His whole mood tanks. That's not healthy either. But apparently all of that is less important than how her ex might feel if he gets a whiff of criticism. She even said she might invite him over to clear the air and explain that I acted on my own. I told her flat out, if she does that, it'll feel like she's picking his side over ours. Look, I'm not saying he needs to stop having fun with his kid. I'm saying maybe ease up. Space it out. Include a normal weekend in there once in a while. A library trip. A movie night at home. Something that makes the day-to-day feel less like a punishment by comparison. But instead of hearing that, everyone's acting like I want to cancel birthdays and shut down playgrounds. My son didn't ask for this dynamic. Neither did I. We're just trying to function in a house where the bar keeps getting raised by someone who doesn't live here full time. If I don't speak up for my kid, who will? Ada? Comments. Comment 1. YTA. You're not leveling the playing field. You're policing a kid's joy because your own parenting is wearing thin. You know what's easier than asking another parent to stop doing cool stuff with their own kid? Doing anything different in your own house. Instead of demanding the ex cut back, maybe ask yourself why your son's life feels so rigid and transactional. Coaching soccer and paying for dance doesn't automatically make you an emotionally present parent. You're a logistics manager, not a dad. You're putting structure over bonding, and it shows. Also, your resentment towards the ex is loud as hell. The guy sees his kid 4 days a month. What exactly do you want him to do? Spend that time folding laundry and watching PBS. You said it's not about jealousy. But if you have to say that more than once, it is. I'm sorry your kid feels left out. But blaming your stepson and his father isn't the answer. That's on you. Comment 2. YTA. You actually went to the father of your stepson and asked him to dial down joy because you don't want to invest the same energy into your own kids. You're not even hiding it. You framed it as balancing things. But what you mean is you don't want to be outshined by a guy who only gets his son 2 weekends a month. You'd rather dim someone else's light than do the hard work of building your own. Your stepson doesn't exist to make your son feel emotionally safe. And let's be honest, you're not doing your son any favors either. You're reinforcing the idea that when someone else has something better, the solution is to drag them down, not lift yourself up. And while we're at it, you really thought the ex would respond positively to you trying to parent his time because your household feels less fun. What would you say if he came to you and said your kid's sports made his son feel left out and you should cut back? You'd tell him to F off. Be honest. Comment 3. You openly admit that most of your and your wife's free time revolves around your kids' soccer, dance, competitions, the works. Yet when her son finally gets a break from playing second fiddle in your house, you want to strip that from him too. He gets 4 days a month to be a priority in someone's life. And you want to snatch that away because your own son is sulking. Your stepson didn't choose this family setup. You think he likes watching your daughter get praised for her pirouettes, or your son get driven to soccer camps, while he gets dragged along for errands or ignored. Then the one weekend he gets to ride in the front seat of his life, you show up with a clipboard and complaints? You are a problem. Not your stepson. Not his dad. You. And your wife? She needs to take a long, hard look at why she's letting you dictate her son's joy around your kid's needs. If this continues, don't be surprised when your stepson stops seeing your house as a home and starts seeing it as a place where he just waits to leave. Update. A lot's happened since I posted. Not that I expected Reddit to be on my side, but I didn't realize how fast everyone would jump to defend a guy who gets to be fun dad 2 weekends a month, while I do the real work the other 26 days. The first thing I did was talk to my wife again, thinking if I laid it out more clearly, she'd get where I was coming from. I wasn't even trying to hide it. I told her flat out. This situation is hurting my son, and if she won't do something about it, I will. She didn't take that well. I said we needed to level the experience across the board. Her ex is out there pulling stunts every other weekend, while our household is stuck doing all the unglamorous crap. I told her again, I didn't care if her ex had money or flexibility or wanted to feel like the hero. He needed to either include my kids, sometimes, or tone it all down. Simple. Either bring all the kids to the amusement park or save it for one of the 6 extended visits. It's not that complicated. She looked at me like I had 3 heads. Said her ex has no responsibility towards my kids. I said that's where she's wrong. If what he's doing is actively causing tension in our home between our kids, then yeah, it is his business. And I don't care if Reddit disagrees. That man is helping to create a 2-tier system, and I'm the one left cleaning up the fallout. She refused to talk to him, so I did. I messaged him directly and laid it out. Either make the weekends more inclusive, or stop turning every visit into a damn festival. I suggested a few joint activities and even offered to help coordinate. He left me on read for 2 days, then sent back, "Not your call. Worry about your own parenting." So I did. First, I told my stepson calmly that I didn't want him rubbing his weekends in other people's faces. He wasn't being malicious about it, but the constant story time was turning into a problem. I said it in plain language. Not everyone here gets to have the same kind of fun. It's better if you keep those stories to yourself. He looked confused at first, then kind of hurt, and asked if he wasn't allowed to talk about his dad anymore. I said, "You can talk about him, just not every detail of every trip. He's 7. Time to learn that life's not always equal." After that, I had to look at my own son. Honestly, a big part of the problem is that he slipped into this really passive mindset, constantly comparing himself instead of engaging with his own life. So I decided to switch things up. I got him registered for a winter soccer camp, and we've started checking out some futsal options too. The schedule's a bit tighter, sure, but he needs routine and something to work toward. I also signed him up for a recreational basketball league. It's not meant as a punishment. It's meant to give him activities of his own, so he isn't so fixated on whatever his stepbrother is doing. My daughter's schedule is already maxed, so not much change there. But I've started pushing both my kids harder to stay focused on their paths. They're going to have to learn that the world isn't going to bend over to accommodate them, or anyone else's highlight reel. Things came to a head this past week. My stepson came back from his dad's after a 3-day weekend trip to some mountain cabin resort. The first thing he did was come into the kitchen and say, "We went tubing down the mountain, and I ate pancakes with whipped cream for breakfast every day." My son was sitting there eating cereal. He didn't even finish. Just got up and went to his room. That was it for me. I sat my wife down and told her that from now on, if her ex continues this Disney dad act with no regard for how it affects the rest of our family, we need to start considering alternate arrangements. I said, "If you won't talk to him, and you won't compromise, then my only move is to protect my son, even if that means he spends less time here." She flipped. Said I was threatening to throw my own kid out because I can't manage my emotions. Not true. What I said was that this household is becoming toxic for him because the comparison never stops, and she refuses to even acknowledge it. It's like she's fine watching my son sink emotionally as long as her son keeps getting his sparkly weekends. I suggested she ask her ex to do something normal for once, like a weekend at home, a puzzle, or baking cookies just one weekend without roller coasters or hotels. She refused. Said I was obsessed. Said I was controlling. Fine. She can call it what she wants. But I'm not standing by while my son keeps feeling second best in his own damn home. She said she wouldn't let me dictate her son's life, just because my parenting approach doesn't feel exciting enough. She threatened to start doing separate outings with her son on his dad's off weeks to balance the joy. I told her if she starts running her own version of Disneyland while I'm trying to stabilize things here, we're done being a team. Right now, my son is staying with my sister for a few days. I needed him to get some space. He said he feels like a guest in the house when his stepbrother comes home from visits. He said he's tired of feeling like he lost every weekend before it starts. That crushed me. So yeah, I took action. Not because I want to punish anyone, but because no one else is doing what needs to be done. I still stand by everything I said. If my wife wants to keep playing neutral and pretending this situation isn't affecting all 3 kids, that's on her. But I'm not going to sit in silence while my household gets divided into fun and function. My job is to look out for my children first. And if that makes me the arsehole, fine. But at least I'm not a passive one. Comments. Comment 1. Look, I get the resentment. I coach too. I'm up before sunrise, hauling gear, dealing with pissed off refs and tired kids. It's exhausting. And yeah, I've gritted my teeth when I see weekend parents swoop in with gifts and roller coasters, while I'm teaching a kid how to lose gracefully. So I get the feeling. But you acted like a complete idiot. The minute you told a 7-year-old to keep his happy memories to himself, game over. You stopped being a parent and became a tyrant. You're using fairness as a shield because deep down, you hate being the boring one. You're not asking for balance. You're demanding that everyone else dim their light so you don't look dull in comparison. Your wife? She's not perfect. Either she should have stepped in sooner to address the tension between the boys and figured out how to make space for her own son. But her ex has every right to make those weekends count. Your anger is valid, but your response is pathetic. You could have taken your son to a goddamn arcade and made a memory. Instead, you called a summit with a guy you hate and banned joy in your home. You turned this into a competition and lost your humanity in the process. Comment 2. I grew up in a blended family where the step-parent always made sure their bio kids got the spotlight. You're doing the same thing in reverse, making sure your son isn't overshadowed by your stepson, even if that means dimming the only fun your stepson gets. You're obsessed with fairness, but only when your kid isn't the one coming out ahead. You keep using phrases like household dynamic and protecting my son, but you're justifying emotional abuse. You've isolated your wife emotionally, tried to force her into co-parenting with her ex through you, and then removed your son from the house when it didn't go your way. And don't act like telling a kid to read the room was some noble parenting moment. That was you projecting adult insecurity onto a 7-year-old. You didn't teach him empathy. You taught him his joy is conditional on other people's moods. Your wife is probably biting her tongue to keep the family together. But if I were her, I'd be lawyering up. Because this post reads like the opening chapter of a custody battle. YTA. Completely. Update. I honestly don't even know how to process what the hell just happened. Everything blew up so fast it feels like I stepped out of my own house and into someone else's life. I came here expecting people to argue with me, not expecting my entire family to effing disappear in the middle of the night, like I'm some villain in a documentary. Let me back up. Things were tense for days. My wife barely spoke to me except for things like, he has homework. Your daughter needs to be picked up. Or, don't forget the sign-up sheet. Surface level SHT. But underneath, she was checked out. Completely flat. The kind of calm that isn't calm, the kind of quiet where someone's already made a decision. The kids were avoiding each other too. My daughter was staying in her room more, saying she had choreography to practice. My son has barely been talking since coming back from my sister's. And my stepson. He tiptoed around like he was afraid breathing wrong would set me off, which pissed me off because I wasn't even doing anything to him at that point. That tension wasn't my fault. It was the entire unfair dynamic blowing up and no one acknowledging it. Then came the school talent show. We all went because my daughter had a duet. My stepson also had something, a simple class presentation about heroes. I didn't know he was even participating. Nobody told me. But apparently everyone else did. He gets on stage with this poster board collage of pictures from his weekends with his dad, fishing, tubing, baseball games, the goddamn monster truck rally, all taped next to a big title, My Hero. He starts talking about how his dad always makes special time for him, how his dad takes him on adventures, and how his dad never gets too tired to play. Then he said something like, my dad makes weekends the best part of my life. People in the audience did that soft, awa. And my wife looked at him like he personally cured cancer. Meanwhile, my son was staring at the floor. My daughter was chewing her nails, and I felt my stomach twist. I didn't cause this, but it sure as hell landed on me. I walked out. I didn't make a scene, I just walked out. My wife followed me into the hallway, asking what the hell I was doing. I told her flat out, I'm sick of being treated like an extra in my own house, while your ex gets the hero edit. She told me to get over myself, because it wasn't about me. That's when the fight started. She said I'd been emotionally suffocating the family for months, maybe years. Said the kids flinch when I raise my voice. Said our entire home feels like a competition arena because I keep trying to orchestrate every detail. And yeah, I yelled back, not going to sugarcoat it. I said I'm the only one actually doing anything to hold this family together, while everyone else pretends chaos is normal. I told her she's letting her ex steer the emotional climate of our house, and I'm the only one who sees the damn problem. She walked back inside. I didn't. When I got home that night, the house was quiet. I figured everyone was exhausted from the long day. I went to bed thinking in the morning we'd talk it out like adults. Instead, I woke up to an empty house. Not sleeping in another room, empty, I mean empty. Drawers open. Clothes gone. Backpacks gone. Shoes gone. Toothbrushes gone. Every kid stuff is missing. My wife's car was gone from the driveway. There was one note on the kitchen counter. Don't contact us until we reach out first. Everyone needs space from you. That's it. I checked my phone, 12 missed calls from my ex. I call her back, and she starts screaming before I can get a word out. She said my son told her. Dad says I'm losing in life because of stepson. She said my son cried the entire car ride and said he doesn't want to come back because the house feels heavy. Then she said, and I quote, if you ever make our son feel like he's in competition for your approval again, I will take this to court. So that's great. Then came the kicker, my wife's ex texted me. Never spoken to me directly unless absolutely necessary. He sends one message. Stay away from my kid. If I hear one more thing about you telling him to hide, quiet down, or read the room for your son's comfort, we'll deal with it legally. My wife didn't defend me. She didn't say a word. She let him say that. She stood by and watched it happen like she was watching a sitcom fight scene unfold. I lost my goddamn mind. Not violently, I didn't throw anything, but I screamed into the empty living room because what else was there to do? I do everything for this family, and somehow I'm the one destroying it. No one is hearing what I've been saying from the start. The imbalance was tearing us apart. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was trying to fix a system that was making my kid feel inferior and making me feel like a background character, while an outsider shaped the emotional hierarchy. I tried to enforce balance. I tried to get everyone on the same page. I tried to protect my son from feeling overshadowed in his own home. But now, my wife is with her parents. My stepson is living with his dad full-time, for now. My kids are staying with their mother. And I'm here by myself trying to figure out how the hell I became the arsehole when all I wanted was stability. I genuinely don't understand what the F I did that was so unforgivable. Yeah, I pushed hard. Yeah, I demanded structure. Yeah, I expected fairness. But I wasn't abusing anyone. I wasn't hurting anyone. I was trying to keep the family functioning. So here I am asking the one question I never thought I'd ask. What the F do I do now? Because apparently trying to keep the house balanced made me the bad guy in everyone's story. And I'm honestly starting to wonder if everyone else lost their minds, or if I actually did. Comments. Comment 1. YTA. And this is what emotional control looks like from the inside. You didn't lose your family overnight. You eroded them. Every rule, every forced schedule, every time you told a 7-year-old to read the room instead of sharing joy. That was one drop. You say you were trying to hold the family together. No. You were trying to control it into submission. And now you're alone because everyone got tired of living under emotional martial law. Your son left because you made him the poster child for your ego. Your wife left because she realized you weren't building a family, you were building a little empire. And your stepson, he was collateral. The quiet, smiling casualty of your personal insecurity war. You want to know what you did? You made your love conditional on obedience. That's what. Comment 2. Let's break it down from a systems level. You created a house where happiness had to be rationed, where no one was allowed to feel good unless it was fair and aligned with your structure. That's not a home. That's a psychological boot camp. And your language gives you away background character, balance, emotional hierarchy. You've turned family into a power game. Everything is strategy, control, and optics. Nothing is love. Your wife didn't let her ex say what he said. She probably wanted to say worse herself, but let someone else deliver the blow. And your kids didn't flee. They escaped. There's a difference. You want to know what you did wrong? You treated parenting like a hostile takeover. And the people you were trying to unify staged a quiet rebellion. Now you're shocked they're gone. You were the threat. Second story. I adopted a disabled dog. Now a woman from animal welfare decided my dog deserved a better house. Tried to break into my house to steal my dog. Claimed I abused my dog for getting her a much-needed surgery they had neglected. And has now reported me to the cops. Quick info in advance. This is a post from a German sub and translated. There might be some translation errors. Animal shelters in Germany and Austria can have relatively strict requirements for new owners, as they want to make sure that the animals find a good home. In the case of found animals, the original owners usually have 6 months to claim their possession. For this reason, when animals are taken over from the animal shelter, a corresponding contract is often drawn up that takes this into account, as well as issues such as liability for veterinary costs. Post. I live in Austria. Adopted a female dog from an Austrian animal welfare association 8 months ago. I had another dog from the same organization before. There were never any problems. The organization has one of the already known here contracts where ownership is not to be transferred. However, the return clause only includes cases where I can no longer take care of it, as well as animal cruelty. My dog was partially paralyzed hind legs when I took her over because of a vertebral fracture. She had therefore used a wheelchair. Our veterinarian determined that surgery was possible. I also had it done over 3K. She can now walk again, limping a bit. The contract stipulates that I cover all veterinary costs and also have to pay for extraordinary expenses, but have no duty to provide information about it. A month ago, I was asked for photos of H. It was also the same with the previous dog and sent some, and was then asked about the state of health, because there was no wheelchair. and I just said there was an operation and H was fine. There was a positive reaction and nothing more. A week later, I got a WhatsApp message that I had to return the dog because she should no longer live in Vienna, and they had a couple with a house and garden that she would take over. No idea if these people really exist. At this point, it may be worth mentioning that H is a pretty 2-year-old Spitz, in whom there would certainly be a lot of interest without a disability. I wrote back that I was not prepared to do so, and that the circumstances in which I would have to return H according to the contract did not apply. Then came the message that it would be animal cruelty to keep such a dog in the city in an apartment, and that I had endangered her because I did not have the surgery approved. I felt that this was cheeky in this context and did not react to further contact, because I thought that the worst thing I would get was a lawyer's letter, or, as the worst escalation, a property lawsuit from the district court, and that would not hold. Well, yesterday the woman from the organization stood in front of my apartment door and demanded the dog. My neighbors wrote to me that she was there. She also asked if they had keys to my apartment because she had to pick up my dog. I had to go home from work and asked her to leave. When she did not do that and screamed, I called the police. She then claimed that I had stolen H from the organization. I showed photos of the dog as well as mail history about the adoption. My neighbors have confirmed that they see H every day. Police thankfully told her that even if the dog was her property, she could not take it on her own. She then left and said she would now report me for theft. A complaint or lawsuit is not my biggest concern now, but she was so upset that I think she could snatch H from me when I'm out with her, or do that when she's out with my dog sitter for lunch. She missed her by maybe 45 minutes, and I can't get her back, because God knows where she is. The behavior is also just very bizarre, and I could imagine that there is a mental illness behind it. I don't know what would be best in this situation. Is there anything I can do here? There has been no interference with possession. I am also unsure whether this could fall under dangerous threat. I was overwhelmed, but not intimidated much. I am considering whether a declaratory action of property rights could make sense here. But since there is no case law on this topic, and the contract at least claims that it is not a purchase contract, nominal fee equals €450, my legal expenses insurance would almost certainly not cover this. Edit. Thanks for all the feedback and messages. I have now contacted a lawyer who will apply for a restraining order with me next week and go through the contract and then give me an assessment. Dog and I are now with my parents, and she will stay here until the legal situation is more clear. Please don't take it personally if I don't get in touch. It's a bit too much for me right now. Comments. Commenter. I am a German and not an Austrian lawyer, but that almost sounds like fraud. Adoption, with retention of title as far as possible, of course. Make the adopter pay for the surgery. Reclaim the animal. Save costs. In any case, it is of course a breach of contract to reclaim the animal if there is actually no case of animal cruelty. I would insist on that. May be interesting. If you return it, you could at least claim back the surgery costs according to German law. I am relatively sure that there will be a similar regulation in Austria. At least in Germany, the opposing party would also have to prove the case of animal cruelty if it wants the animal back. OP. Thank you. I don't know if this was intentionally planned. I was told that they didn't know if the fracture was treatable. I rather have the impression that the dog is now too good for me in her eyes as a single without a house. I was only ever offered old or disabled dogs. I find it unlikely that animal cruelty could be credibly argued. He is never alone for more than 5 hours and lives in an apartment, but in a quiet complex with a park next door. The operation was Liege Artis. I think there are also enough witnesses for the species' appropriate handling. Commenter. Do you know where the dog comes from? Was she a found animal? I once had a case where 2 animals were already handed over to the adopters, and months later the original owner contacted me to say that the animals had been stolen from her by her ex and abandoned, and that she would now like to have them back. Of course, there was a huge drama, and it was concealed from the adopters by the shelter. OP. What I was told. She was with a breeder, and after the injury, she was handed over to a boarding house and not picked up. It's believable because of her race, but of course I don't know for sure. I would understand the whole drama much better if it were the situation you describe. Update. Since many have asked me for an update, and a lot has happened since then, I don't want to withhold the developments from you. Thank you very much for your great tips. Short summary of the case. Almost a year ago, I adopted a disabled dog who used a wheelchair due to a fracture in the spinal area. This could be eliminated with an operation to such an extent that she now runs almost normally. Shortly after the animal welfare organization from which I adopted her noticed this in a photo update. They wanted her back because their reason at the time such a dog, namely a non-disabled one, can be placed in a better family than me, a working single woman without a garden. It went so far that the chairwoman of the association tried to get into my apartment to take the dog with her. This was justified by the animal transfer contract, according to which it is not a purchase contract, and they can take back the animals if they are endangered. Now to the update. As already mentioned in the comments to the last post, H went to my family for some time shortly after the posting because I was psychologically exhausted, and I didn't want to expose my dog Walker to the situation. If she were attacked, that would be the next legal case. I found a lawyer who wrote a letter to the organization and argued in summary that the contract was a purchase contract, and even if it were not, there would be no prerequisites for taking H with me. I then demanded a cease and desist declaration regarding the disturbance of my property to H. It was followed by a completely abstruse response from the daughter of the chairwoman of the organization, in which she claimed that this was her dog. From the exchange of my lawyer with the daughter, the following picture emerges. The other side does not have a lawyer, at least now, and the letter contains various AI-written questionable statements and arguments. He was not, as I was told, taken from his former owner. She was the family dog of the daughter of the chairwoman of the organization. Receipts for this were also supplied. After the accident in which she was unable to walk, we don't know how that happened, the daughter could no longer take care of her because, as she said, she also has small children. The daughter allegedly asked her mother to find a foster home for H until both children went to school. She had not given her the authority to assign H for an unlimited period of time in the name of her organization. No evidence was provided for this statement. Now both children are in school, so she wants H back, as allegedly agreed. According to their AI, I could not obtain any right to possession, and of course no ownership via the contract, as there is no apparent representation. She would have entrusted the dog to her mother, and not to the organization, which is why the prerequisite that she had to arrange for the license is not met, and the contract is therefore invalid due to the abuse of authority. Fun fact: the mother is authorized to sign individually for the organization, and also signed my contract on her own. As a cost, she is willing to give me €50 per month as compensation for expenses. For those who don't have dogs, even a problem-free dog costs more, which, by the way, is only €50 more than I paid for H as a nominal fee. By the way, I should not get the nominal fee in addition, because it is not a purchase price, but compensation for the general work of the organization. Lol. She does not want to pay for the operation and other special costs, because she has not agreed as the owner. And in her opinion, it would not be useful management because the operation exceeds the value of the dog several times. And the paralysis of H would not be associated with any pain for her, which can hardly be surpassed in cynicism in a dog that is barely 2 years old in my opinion. Incidentally, this is of course incorrect, as a paralyzed area itself may not be felt, but the pressure points of the wheelchair and, in the long term, the pain due to unnatural posture are. Well, what can I say? My solicitor has now filed a declaratory action with the district court, stating that I have a right to ownership of H's property, or alternatively a permanent right of possession, or alternatively that the daughter must reimburse me for all costs incurred for H. That is, approximately €7,500. Just to clarify, I definitely want to keep H, but that's exactly why the costs for the daughter should be as high as possible, so that hopefully even if everything else fails, she will leave H with me for that reason. The injunction, which was applied for at the same time, was granted by the court today, so neither the daughter nor the mother nor anyone from the organization may disturb my possession of H until the end of the proceedings. Since neighbors spotted the chairwoman twice more after the first incident, H now has a safety harness, including a mini camera just in case. My dog Walker wasn't up for that sort of trouble, which I understand, which is why H now has to play inside at noon on my working days. The preliminary hearing is not scheduled until early December. My solicitor will also try to reach an out-of-court settlement before then, but the daughter seems very convinced by her AI solicitor. Thankfully, she now has to find a solicitor for the court proceedings due to the amount in dispute. There are now over 150 pages of AI in the file, after 3 weeks of exchanges, about a third of which contains something relevant, a third German law, and a third personal attacks on me. I cannot express in words how little I want to deal with the whole thing. Otherwise, I can only recommend that everyone avoid being as foolish as I was, and thinking, oh well, if the contract for my adopted animal states that I have no ownership rights, nothing will happen. It's incredibly stressful for me right now, and of course I wouldn't have gotten a dog from the association without their stupid contract. But it's actually outrageous that people like that, without any specific training, presumed to decide the fate of an animal for its entire life, after only a few months with them. I'll be happy to let you know how the court ruled on my contract, should it come to that. But that would probably take several more months. Comments. Commenter. I find it interesting that the dog went to her mother, and not to the organization. However, the nominal fee should not be refunded, as it only remunerates the work of the organization. She doesn't seem to be in complete agreement with her argumentation. OP. It happened that my lawyer raised the protection fee herself. If the daughter had admitted in one way or another that it had arrived at her, that would be proof that the organization had acted inappropriately. And with that, if you will, you could then perhaps let the organization burst. In addition, it would then, of course, be clear that the lack of power of attorney to the organization claimed by her was certainly present. OP on a comment about giving the name of the organization after the legal issues are resolved. Hello, yes, that's what I would like to do. The whole thing was also reported by my lawyer to MA60, the responsible Viennese Municipal Department for Animal Welfare. And the protection fee was discussed by her, among other things, because the organization is eligible for donations. And if my protection fee goes to the daughter, it would probably be over in any case. I don't want to do that right now, because it could be an issue in settlement negotiations. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.